I think the topic today is an interesting one in respect of, I posted earlier this week something around the 5 case approach that government used for building a case for change. When Richard mentioned this as a topic, I kind of warmed to it immediately, because we're going what I consider to be upstream from the actual implementation of the thing and the delivery of the thing. And I think we focus a lot on what we're going to do today, really task focused. But what Richard did for me was he raised that awareness that actually it's probably upstream and to the left where the actual critical point in time comes in terms of winning hearts and minds for the change that's about
to come. You have to have a credible plan that's owned by named people for both of these. And this seems obvious, but in my experience, it is often not there in change projects and programs. In my experience, sometimes putting together a results chain that shows how the right outcomes will be delivered and when can be useful. Asking yourself if you have enough money, asking yourself if you've asked for enough money, because there's nothing worse than asking for too little money because you're scared that you won't get enough money, and then discovering that you have too little money. Do you have the right resources? Have you got the right team? Have you got the team that can deliver this project? And the delivery plan also has to address the risks and uncertainties that face the change project. And risk and uncertainty are not the same thing and can't be addressed in quite the same way, but they're often treated together at the same time as part of the same problem. They're about the unknowable future. The fourth dimension is readiness. The organization has to be ready, has to have a plan for absorbing the change. And the organization needs to ensure that all its formal mechanisms will support the change being made. So you don't want anything that you have not thought about to come and sideswipe you later on. So you need to think about things that will be impacted by the change you're making and make certain they're ready. You may need to develop new talents, new skills, new teams. And throughout, you need to turn communication into conviction, into commitment, and into participation. And in my experience, you cannot over-communicate change. So one of the things I do as a program manager is I make myself available to talk to any team, any sub-team, any individual, any part of the organization at any time about the change we're anticipating. And the fifth dimension might sound a bit left field, but there is an emotional dimension to change. The change has to be as desirable as you can make it while being truthful. You can't overpaint it, but you have to paint a picture of a future that is attractive. It has to be honest, and sometimes change produces both winners and losers in organizations, and there's no easy way to make it attractive to the losers. But if you make it comprehensible, if you paint the correct picture, the complete picture, you can make change acceptable even to those who will be adversely affected by it. And most change does not affect many people adversely. Most change is a positive, and that's the picture you want to paint. You want to paint a picture that people can be attracted to. The picture should have sufficient internal logic. It should have a strong enough rationale that people understand why it's the right thing to do and want to be a part of it. And particularly if you're doing anything transformational, it needs to be able to be described very easily in a from-to statement. So we're transforming from a products company to a customer experience company or something similar. So I've talked a lot about pictures and painting pictures. And while we're talking about pictures, perhaps Martin can tell us about the picture that we're going to paint this afternoon.
So the painting of the picture, this is what we're going to do this afternoon. So if you have the prop in front of you, this is the approach I'd like to suggest with in terms of painting this picture, is to respect the fact that every individual and stakeholder within the program is going to have a what's in it for me kind of mindset. That is my experience, that we all act, we think we're in an organization with kind of the shared values and purpose, and we are to a degree, but actually people's behaviors are very much driven from themselves. So I want to put that to the test, and I'm going to use this demonstration, and I've actually started on this screen, which I'm going to share with you. And this is the digital kit that you can jump into now. And what I'd like you to do, and I've asked Elizabeth, Bill and Nick to play particular roles this afternoon. I've asked Bill to act from a marketing perspective, Nick from an operations perspective, and Elizabeth from a management perspective. And what I'd like to do is for you to bring those team symbols on the board. What this simulates is a conversation with stakeholders about where they see themselves in the organization. And as they do that, and I go through this little script that I've used over the years to kind of to engage and to bring out this what's in it for me. If Bill, Nick and Elizabeth could bring their team symbols on, that would be great, and we'll see those appearing on screen. So I'm going to use an organization which is here to provide bespoke wealth management products and services. I think this week I'm going to use an example of digitalization of the business. This is me. I am here. This is my role. And that's really important about taking responsibility and accountability. The biggest challenge and opportunity with this change regarding the digitalization of the business is either a challenge or an opportunity. And we're going to use the challenge and opportunity symbol to do that on the board. So I'd like Nick and Elizabeth and Bill, if they can, to bring on the challenge and opportunity symbol to describe a challenge or opportunity they see with the digitalization of the business. And then I want to convert that into a third point, which is, I don't know if it will, because you've not seen this change come to fruition yet, but if we're building a convincing case for change, building the picture and this emotional connection, I would like this change to increase and then use a measure symbol.
I'm just thinking from a marketing point of view, we wouldn't have to send out lots of information on flyers physically. So it wouldn't just be a thing of photocopying a digital presence, but making the digital presence totally different from a letter or an envelope, which you would normally get.
And that will reduce printing costs, I guess.
Yes, yes.
So as we're having this conversation and Bill would have this in front of him, I'm going to take the challenge one off, Bill. I think what you've got there is fewer paper leaflets, a money symbol, and I'm going to bring on the measure, because actually the money and the measure there are working together. So both of them are a number-based comment. They're a number-based opportunity based on fewer paper leaflets and therefore a measure of reduced costs. I think that's a really good example. Thanks, Bill. Over to Nick in the centre of the page. What connections have you been making there?
I've been making quite a few at the minute. Right at the minute, I'm not a happy bunny. I'm not so happy with change. I feel kind of isolated here in the middle. My job is essentially to get the data, compile a report, and make sure that that gets over to the customer. So from my perspective, any changes that we're going to do, it either shouldn't affect me, or I would rather have it so that I do receive some kind of a benefit that helps my daily job. But if you can sort of solve my biggest gripe, which is to reduce some of the silos, make it easier for me to get the data that I need to get, then I can produce the reports that we're issuing out to our clients as part of our service level agreements. A more accurate report for our clients, it means that they're doing better and we're servicing them better from my point of view. But unless you're going to do that.
So what I've done there, Nick, is you've focused on this lovely cycle, which gives me an insight to how you are regarding this change coming down the line. And what I've added to you, because I think in human nature terms, we like to help each other out. So what I've done whilst you were talking, I've added a measure symbol, and I think it's around that quicker and increased accuracy of the analytics that you're doing. So what it creates is a colleague to colleague, a peer-to-peer conversation in how Nick's seen that change. And that's right in the middle of the business. A series of technology symbols along the customer journey. Now, when Richard's talking about building the picture, I think this is really important to build up a series of visualizations about what this digitalization actually means. So I would use a series of couplets with the customer and the technology all the way along. Now, what's interesting, Elizabeth there is sat down in management quite a long way. And I know this is quite dramatic, but Elizabeth, you're quite a long way from the customer journey. So what kind of connections are you making when you're in the room hearing Nick and Bill and others talking about digitalization of the business? What's back to the script? What's in it for you?
I think what's in it for me is what the colleague journey is. So how does this make everybody's job easier as a result of this technology, this digitalization? And as a sort of management team, you would hope that this would make the business more efficient, more effective, and you'd have better quality data so that you could make better decisions about customers, about kind of where you've got resource, that kind of thing. So I think there should be a line across for a colleague journey in terms of when this technology drops, because that changes ways of working, it changes who you interact with, or if you still interact with people, or you're interacting with systems now. So on an individual level, people's jobs become different. And, you know, to the point about resistance, some people might enjoy that, but some people might not. And as the management of this business, we need to understand what that's going to look like and who needs support, who will adopt this change really easily. It might be certain people need more training than others. How do you set up that network so that this is a smooth transition from A to B?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Infrastructure to enable the change.
Yeah, I've noted there, and I've oversimplified what you've said, Elizabeth, just in the time, but I heard effectiveness of the business was your key measure, one that you passed over. I also think there'll be measures for you within that colleague journey. So I think we would spend some time unpacking that what you've just said. What I notice about what you've said, and this happens a lot with big picture, and if you're making your own notes, particularly if you're new to big picture, I want to bring something out that's important, and it's about the velocity of the information that Elizabeth was layering on there. My observation is when you have stakeholders who are working in a management space, or particularly on the leadership team, the amount of connections they make in a short space of time really speeds up. So Elizabeth there has sped through those, and you're probably making lots of notes, and my brain was computing it. With regard to Nick, the data analyst in this simulation, Nick was focusing very much on data. So that's a different velocity of information around data. And if I may, in this simulation, Bill provided a very straightforward and simple example of the formula. And the way people interpret that little script is always different. And that's beautiful as well, because everyone works differently. Elizabeth's gone for a really high volume, high velocity, layered translation of the script. And that's all right. All I would say in big picture terms is we would spend some time unpacking the colleague journey. We would spend time unpacking the training and their relative measures. So we've probably got at least 5 to 10 to 15 points of data reference there that we would put on big picture. Is that fair, Elizabeth, in what I've said?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're really high level kind of subjects, aren't there? And that you're right, there will be measures in each one that you would then kind of pick up, and opportunities, I guess, as well, based on the data that you've got.
Martin, I just, sorry, I'm new to this, but I'm thinking as you're talking, I can hear benefits everywhere.
If you look at that page, just with a very natural and common sense view, everywhere is populated other than partners and suppliers and sales. Now, if you believe that every part of the business ecosystem is important, as I do, then actually that would draw attention to them. So there's a bit of a gap analysis going on, but you don't need to use those words. You could be working with people who don't want to know the words gap analysis, but actually you could say, can you just help me out using the challenge and opportunity or the measures in the areas of partners and suppliers and sales? And I'm going to go to Hugh, because I think you wanted to make a point earlier, Hugh, so please come in.
Yeah, what I wanted to discuss was what I put down there as an opportunity, the change management program. Elizabeth touched on this a little bit. We're talking about management and admin and talking about the training.
And my view now is that this ought to be done at operations level. It's called organizational innovation, and it's basically change management upside down. I've been involved with a lot of change management programs where we've started with the management, and the management buy into it, but they really are only buying into it as management rather than as the staff. In order for a change management program to be successful, I think you should start at the staff level, which is operations in this case, and get their buy-in before and more important than the buy-in from the management. So that's what I meant by the change program organizational innovation. Yeah. And that obviously would be measured. We'd use technology for it. We could measure it, and it would make it a more successful program.
Yeah, this is, so we're looking up here. If I just use my little annotation stick up here, aren't we here about this innovation up here, starting in operations? Yes, that way around, not the other way around.
Starting in operations and working back towards management, which is the
excellent.
arrow.
Yeah, who jumped in there? I'm very happy to take a view.
That was me, Nick.
Yeah, go Nick.
No, I was going to pretty much echo what Hugh was saying. I've never quite been able to understand why we always started change from the top down. You know, one of the beauties of your big pick is that I've always experienced change coming from an individual. You know, it's how change is initiated. Unless there was some large sort of overarching viewpoint, such as, you know, the company's vision changed, or, you know, there was some kind of change in the value chain prior, or that's going to directly impact the business.
Yeah,
you know, generally I would argue that change comes from the bottom anyway. That's where it's typically initiated, either from the marketeer, somebody in operations, maybe it's accounts, maybe somebody's identified that, you know, we're overspending in a particular area, and so we start to investigate that. So, as Hugh said, just, you know, I feel from a ground level up, that's where change actually commences, and you know, when we understand that, it just makes more sense.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And
sorry, Nick, I've always seen it from the other end.
Go, Reg.
No, I was going to say I've always seen it from the top down rather than bottom up, because someone needs to drive that change. People at the bottom, yeah, of course they're closer to the drawing board, but they don't have enough strategic direction to actually make that change. So it has to be driven from the top. At least that's my experience in 5 business cases and benefits.
Yeah, okay. No,
I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference from driving it at the top and
initiating it,
buying into it at the bottom. And my point is not so. I quite agree with you. I've been involved with change management a lot, and of course you've got to be driving it from the top, because at the end of the day they're going to be paying the money in order to get the change program through. However, you need to start getting the buy-in from the bottom. Rather than from the top. In fact, some people at the top don't even know what the buy-in is. It's the people on the coalface that are using it, and you've got to get their buy-in for it to be successful.